Hi, I'm Mike Woolley, and Joel asked me to put together a video on my recent experiences with Windsurf. Joel put me onto Windsurf back in December, and frankly, it has been a game changer in terms of my productivity. So, I'm going to talk to you today about a couple of those projects that I've done since December. I really am excited about the possibilities of this technology in at Vanguard. Let me jump into like one of the first projects I did, which was to build a tank game for myself. And I started out with this 2D version, which frankly I was able to get working in about 90 minutes. Now this is certainly a more refined version of that original game, but you can see it's pretty functional um, and a lot of fun. Actually, quite difficult to win. After I built that, I went on to try something a little more sophisticated. So I made a 3D version of the same game, and this took a little longer than 90 minutes. The physics of it are quite a bit more complicated, and frankly, the first versions of the game were not. It needed some work, but and actually the game, without me even asking, it created a third person version and a first person version. So here's the first person version, a little more immersive, but you can see this one doesn't have sound effects. I just added that recently to the 2D game. So let's just jump over and look at the code here. Here's the code. It actually isn't as much code as you would think to run one of these games. This is the 2D version. This is the 3D version, and there's some common files here. And it's basically this is a pretty simple architecture. It's all running in the browser. It's all JavaScript, HTML, CSS. The way you I wrote this is basically I never actually looked at this code. I just kept typing what I wanted in this chat window over here, and it kept telling me what it was doing as it did it. It generates files. When it generates a file, you can see what it actually changed by clicking this open diff, and then you either accept or reject those changes. You can actually test it before you accept the changes, and then it's always good practice to use source control, which I did, to capture frequent commits in case you can get yourself into a loop where it breaks something and you have to back up a few versions to kind of and start over. So that's the first example. Let me move on to the second one now. Hello, back again, and let's continue with the second demo. So after the tank game, I wanted to see how far I could push vibe coding. So I had this project idea that I've had for a number of years with my brother, who's a math modeler, to build a website that does engineering calculations. And he currently does them in a spreadsheet, but they'd be much more powerful and usable on a website. So I actually tried to build this website a few years ago and really just got stuck trying to make it work and gave up on it. But with the new, empowered by this new tool, I decided to give it a go again. And I'll talk more in detail about the architecture of it. But first, let's just dive in for a quick demo of what the site does. So here's the site. It has full security registration, forgot your password, two-way, two-factor, all that. I used an AWS service for all that. This image here is actually generated by AI. Actually, a lot of this homepage was just generated by AI by a high-level description I gave it of the site. So first, I'm gonna sign into the site using my user ID and password. And right now, the calculations on the site are really basic. I was just really trying to get the architecture and the framework together, but it shows all the functionality of it, and all the architectural elements are in place now. to do much more complex calculations. So here's a really basic one: A equals B plus 2C. You put in B and C, hit calculate, and it makes a call to the back end and gives you that answer. But one of the features of the site is going to be to be able to do this in batch. So I can upload a very large file of data, and it will upload it to the back end. And then as soon as it's uploaded, it kicks off a process to process it asynchronously in the back end. Eventually, it sends an event back to the front end to say, hey, I'm done. And then it gives you a link to download your file. And if I open that file back up, what I'll see is the original input data plus the input values plus the output calculated value. And then if you want to check it, you can include your own calculation of what the expected value is, and it'll actually check those two and flag them. So this is a way I also tested the calculation as well. Here's the code behind it. There's a front end repo and a back end repo. One of the things that I did just recently that's kind of cool is I had it generate an architecture. So here's the architecture diagram that it generated literally in one shot. It analyzed all my code and figured out the relationship between all the elements of the code. You can see down here it generated an interaction diagram. It generated kind of a high-level architecture diagram. How am I using AWS services? So I mentioned using Cognito for authentication. I use CloudFront and an S3 website bucket for the front end, and then the back end has an API gateway, Lambda functions, and uses an S3 bucket to store that file I mentioned that gets uploaded and processed. Here shows an interaction diagram. I mentioned the batch process here is kind of interesting, where you want to upload a file. The first thing it does is request what's something called an upload pre-signed URL, returns that. And then you make the call with that pre-signed URL to basically upload your file directly to an S3 bucket, which triggers an event, which kicks off another Lambda that opens that file up and processes it, stores it back in the S3 file, and then sends an event to the front end. The front end's kind of checking the status, and when it gets the status that it's done, then it shows completion with that download link that I showed you. Let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you run into, because this seems like magic at first, but you definitely can run into challenges. One of the challenges that I ran into over time, not right away, was as the code base got bigger and bigger, it started to do its version of a hallucination, where I would ask it to make a change over here, and it might make that change, but in addition to that, it would decide to change unrelated things in the code base. And that got kind of frustrating. I watched some YouTube videos. One of the things that you can do to combat that is you can actually restart the conversation, because it has memory. So it's building up more and more memory of everything that you've done up to that point, which helps it, but at some point that actually gets a little confusing to it. So you just restart the conversation. Another thing that people talk a lot about in the how-to videos is you can actually give these AIs instructions that will be passed in on every request that you make to do something. It always passes in these standard instructions, and these instructions are just something you write out in English. So you say, here's my coding pattern preferences. I always prefer simple solutions. Write code that takes into account different environments, dev, test, prod. Sometimes it can get confused and forget that you have those different environments. This is a key one. You are careful to only make changes that are requested or you are confident are well understood related to the change being requested. So don't go drawing outside the lines and changing things on your own. And then over here, those are global rules. This is some specific rules specific to this project, where I kind of clued it in on the front end and back end high level architecture decisions that I wanted it to use. So, otherwise it wouldn't just on its own necessarily choose those things in its design. So I hope this really piqued your interest. I'm super excited about the future of these tools. They still have a long ways to go to be able to use them fully in an enterprise environment, but I think there's huge potential here and already some business value even today.